You need to leave. Executive visitors only. The words landed in the lobby like a slammed door, sharp enough to make conversations stop and heads turn. At exactly 9:12 a.m. on a clear Tuesday morning in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, the glass and steel headquarters of Sterling Dynamics stood polished and quiet beneath the spring sunlight. Employees moved through the marble lobby carrying laptops and coffee cups. Investors crossed the floor toward elevators wrapped in brushed steel. Everything looked efficient. Everything looked controlled. Then one sentence cracked the atmosphere wide open. Brittany Collins, a 34-year-old receptionist with perfectly styled blonde hair and a company badge hanging from a silver lanyard, stood behind the reception desk with her arms folded. Her eyes were fixed on a woman standing calmly near the visitor check-in kiosk. "Ma'am, I already told you," Brittany said louder this time. "This area is restricted. If you're here for a job interview, the public entrance is around the corner." A few employees glanced over their shoulders. Some slowed their pace. Others pretended not to notice while listening carefully anyway. The woman being addressed didn't react. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. Naomi Carter simply stood there, one hand resting lightly on the handle of a black leather tote. She wore dark jeans, clean white sneakers, and a navy sweater. No designer logos. No jewelry beyond a simple watch. Nothing about her appearance matched the assumptions already forming in Brittany's mind. Naomi's expression remained calm, but her eyes quietly studied the room. She noticed the security desk near the elevators. She noticed the framed awards lining the walls. She noticed the giant Sterling Dynamics logo suspended above the reception area. Most of all, she noticed the people watching. Brittany sighed dramatically. "Ma'am, are you even listening?" The lobby wasn't quiet anymore. It was charged, the kind of tension that spreads before anyone realizes it has arrived. Naomi finally looked toward the receptionist. "I'm listening," she said evenly. Her voice was calm enough to make Brittany sound louder by comparison. "Then you understand you can't stay here." Brittany gestured toward the revolving doors. "You'll need to leave." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "And why is that?" The question was simple. The answer should have been simple too. Instead, Brittany's confidence grew. "Because important meetings are happening upstairs today." She glanced Naomi up and down. "This isn't a public lounge." A man waiting near the elevators lowered his phone. Two young analysts standing beside a coffee station exchanged uncomfortable looks. Brittany either didn't notice or didn't care. People can't just walk in here pretending they belong. The sentence lingered in the air. Naomi said nothing. That silence unsettled Brittany more than any argument could have. Across the lobby, a security officer shifted his weight and looked toward the reception desk. Something about the exchange felt wrong. Naomi slowly turned her gaze toward the company logo above the lobby. For a brief moment, her reflection appeared in the polished metal letters. Then she looked back at Brittany. "Pretending?" she asked quietly. Brittany gave a short laugh. "Yes, pretending." The elevator doors opened somewhere behind them with a soft chime. Employees stepped out and immediately sensed the tension. Conversations faded. Eyes drifted toward reception. The entire lobby seemed to pause. And standing in the center of it all, Naomi Carter remained perfectly still, as though she already knew something nobody else in the room knew yet. Naomi Carter had learned long ago that the most revealing moments in business rarely happened inside boardrooms. They happened in hallways, elevators, waiting areas, and reception desks where people felt safe making assumptions. The lobby of Sterling Dynamics stretched nearly 80 feet from the revolving doors to the elevator bank, lined with polished stone and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Charlotte. Every detail reflected success. Every detail reflected discipline. Yet Naomi knew that culture was not measured by architecture. It was measured by how people treated someone they believed had no influence. Brittany Collins shifted behind the reception desk, clearly expecting Naomi to become embarrassed and leave. Instead, the woman standing in front of her appeared completely at ease. That calmness felt out of place. Most people challenged unfair treatment immediately. Others apologized and walked away. Naomi didn't either. She simply observed. At 46 years old, she had spent more than 2 decades building Carter Capital into one of the largest investment firms in the Southeast. She had negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions, guided companies through recessions, and sat across conference tables from executives whose entire careers depended on a single meeting. Yet none of those experiences showed on the surface today. That was intentional. There was no luxury handbag hanging from her shoulder, no designer suit, no executive entourage following behind her. She had arrived alone, driving herself through morning traffic and parking in the same garage used by ordinary visitors. 3 months earlier, Sterling Dynamics had celebrated record earnings. Financial news outlets credited visionary leadership, aggressive expansion, and strong market performance. What very few employees thought about was ownership. Ownership was quiet. Ownership rarely appeared in company newsletters. Ownership did not stand in front of cameras. Ownership sat behind the numbers. Naomi happened to own more of Sterling Dynamics than anyone else. 51%, to be exact. A controlling stake. A fact buried in annual reports that most employees never read. She glanced toward a digital display mounted near the reception desk. The screen rotated through company achievements and upcoming executive meetings. One item caught her attention. Leadership Excellence Summit. Executive Conference Room. 10th floor. 9:30 a.m. Naomi checked the time. 9:14. Right on schedule. Brittany tapped something on her computer and frowned. Then she tapped again. A moment later, her expression changed. Not concern. Annoyance. What is your name again? She asked. Naomi answered calmly. Naomi Carter. Brittany typed it into the system. A small notification appeared on her monitor. She stared at it for 2 seconds before quickly closing the window. Then she entered the name again. Another notification appeared. Her jaw tightened. Across the lobby, a young employee sitting near the waiting area noticed the reaction. So did a security officer standing near the elevator bank. Brittany looked back up. There is no appointment under that name. The statement came too quickly, too confidently. Naomi knew it was not true. She also knew Brittany knew it was not true. The receptionist leaned forward. If you are looking for human resources, interviews are handled in another building. Naomi folded her hands loosely in front of her. I am not here for an interview. Then why are you here? Brittany asked. For the first time, a faint smile appeared on Naomi's face. Not amusement, not anger, something else, something patient, something knowing. I came to see how this company treats people when it thinks nobody important is watching. The words settled over the lobby like a shadow, and several people who had been pretending not to listen suddenly became very interested in what would happen next. For a moment, nobody spoke. The sentence lingered in the lobby long after Naomi finished saying it. Several employees looked away, pretending to focus on their phones, but the tension had already spread across the room. Brittany Collins forced a laugh that sounded more defensive than confident. That is a nice speech, she said. But it does not change the fact that you are not authorized to be here. Naomi remained still. Her calmness was becoming a problem. Brittany was accustomed to people reacting. She expected frustration. She expected embarrassment. Instead, she found herself speaking more loudly with each passing minute, while Naomi barely raised her voice at all. Brittany turned toward the security desk and waved her hand. Mark. The security officer looked up. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a company security badge clipped to his jacket. He approached slowly, already sensing that the situation was more complicated than it appeared. Everything okay? He asked. Brittany nodded immediately. This visitor refuses to leave. Mark glanced at Naomi. Have you been asked to leave? Naomi answered evenly. Several times. And why are you here? Mark asked. Business, Naomi replied. Before he could respond, Brittany cut in. She claims she belongs in the executive area. The words carried a hint of mockery. Mark looked back and forth between them. Something about Naomi's composure stood out. People trying to bluff their way into restricted areas usually appeared nervous. She looked patient. The elevator doors opened nearby, and another employee stepped into the lobby. Trevor Mills, Regional Operations Supervisor, 41 years old. Expensive gray suit. Perfect tie. The kind of man who enjoyed being seen in charge. He immediately noticed the gathering crowd. What is going on? He asked. Brittany straightened. Relief flashed across her face. Sir, we have a visitor refusing instructions. Trevor looked at Naomi for less than 2 seconds before forming an opinion. I see. His tone suggested he believed he already understood everything. He stepped closer. Ma'am, employees are trying to work. If you do not have business here, I suggest you leave voluntarily. Naomi met his eyes. I do have business here. Trevor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Everyone says that. A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. The statement sounded practiced, like something he had said before. Trevor continued, "You would be surprised how many people walk into corporate offices pretending they know executives." Brittany nodded eagerly. Exactly. Naomi noticed several employees listening from nearby seating areas. One young woman near the elevator bank lowered a tablet she had been reading. Her company badge identified her as Maya Brooks. And in turn, Maya stared at Naomi for a second longer than everyone else. Something about the name sounded familiar. Trevor folded his arms. "Let me make this simple." His voice carried across the lobby. "You are disrupting business operations." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "By standing here?" Trevor ignored the question. "You do not have an appointment." "Actually," Naomi said, "I do." Trevor smirked. "Then where is the confirmation?" Brittany quickly turned her monitor so Trevor could see it. There was a system alert under her name, but it looks wrong. Trevor barely glanced at the screen. "Then it is wrong." The answer came too quickly. Maya noticed it. So did Mark. Neither said anything. Trevor pointed toward the revolving doors. "This conversation is over." The lobby felt smaller now. More crowded. More tense. Employees who should have been heading upstairs remained exactly where they were. Watching. Waiting. Listening. Naomi looked around the room slowly. Then she looked back at Trevor. "Interesting," she said quietly. "You dismissed the information before you even read it." Trevor's smile faded slightly. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. And somewhere inside the building, far above the lobby floor, an executive elevator began descending toward the ground level. Maya Brooks could not stop staring at Naomi Carter. The name echoed somewhere in the back of her mind like a song she had heard before but could not immediately place. She was 23 years old, 6 weeks into her internship at Sterling Dynamics, and eager to avoid drawing attention to herself. Yet something about the woman standing calmly in the center of the growing controversy refused to leave her thoughts. Around the lobby, people had stopped pretending they were not watching. Employees lingered near coffee stations. Visitors remained seated long after their meetings should have started. Even a pair of sales managers standing near the elevators appeared more interested in the reception desk than the conference rooms upstairs. The atmosphere had shifted. It no longer felt like a normal workday. It felt like a test nobody realized they were taking. Trevor Mills glanced around and noticed the audience forming. His posture straightened immediately. Some people became more careful when others were watching. Trevor became more performative. "We are trying to maintain professionalism here," he announced loudly. "Company policy exists for a reason." Naomi looked at him. "Which policy?" Trevor hesitated for half a second. The pause was small, but several people noticed it. "Visitor verification procedures," he answered. "Of course," Naomi replied. "And did you verify anything?" Trevor's jaw tightened. Brittany quickly jumped in. "We checked the system." Naomi turned toward her. "You closed the alert before reading it." Silence followed. Brittany's eyes widened slightly. The young receptionist had not expected anyone to notice. Across the room, Maya felt a strange chill. She had seen executive access alerts before during orientation training. They were rare. Very rare. She slowly opened her company tablet and navigated through archived leadership materials she had reviewed weeks earlier. Meanwhile, Trevor stepped closer to the reception desk. "This discussion is becoming disruptive." Naomi nodded. "Interesting word." "What word?" "Disruptive." Her voice remained steady. "You keep describing my presence as the problem." Trevor folded his arms again. "Because it is." Several employees exchanged glances. The statement sounded harsher than he probably intended. Mark, the security officer, shifted uncomfortably. The longer the situation continued, the less certain he became about Brittany's version of events. He had worked security for nearly 15 years. One lesson had stayed with him. Important people often arrived quietly. The loudest person in a room was rarely the most powerful. Near the waiting area, Maya finally found the file she was searching for. A digital annual shareholder report. She opened the executive ownership section and froze. Her eyes moved from the screen to Naomi, then back to the screen, then back to Naomi again. Her heartbeat quickened. The photo was older, but the resemblance was unmistakable. Before she could process what she was seeing, another employee leaned over her shoulder. "What is it?" Maya quickly lowered the tablet. "Nothing." But it was not nothing. Not even close. At the reception desk, Brittany suddenly pointed toward the doors. I think we have been patient long enough. Naomi did not move. Patient? Brittany laughed nervously. Yes. Naomi glanced around the lobby. You have not asked why I am here. Trevor answered immediately. It does not matter. The statement landed badly. Even he seemed to realize it after saying it. Naomi noticed several employees looking at each other. The room was beginning to wake up. People were starting to hear the conversation differently. Not as a visitor causing trouble, but as someone asking questions nobody wanted answered. Then Maya looked down at her tablet one final time. This time she read the ownership percentage attached to Naomi Carter's name. Her eyes widened. 51%. A controlling stake. The highest ownership position in the entire company. Maya swallowed hard and looked toward Naomi again. For the first time, she understood exactly why the woman appeared so calm. And suddenly, the situation unfolding in front of the entire lobby looked very different from what everyone had assumed only minutes earlier. The realization hit Maya Brooks like a rush of cold air. She looked down at the ownership report again just to make sure she was not imagining it. Naomi Carter, 51% controlling ownership, the largest individual stake in Sterling Dynamics. Her hands tightened around the tablet. Across the lobby, nobody else knew what she had just discovered. Not Brittany, not Trevor, not even the employees watching from a distance. They were all still operating under the same assumption that had shaped every decision made during the past several minutes. They believed the woman standing in front of them had no authority. Trevor Mills seemed especially confident in that belief. He glanced toward Mark and gave a small nod. We are done here, he said. This is a private corporate facility. Naomi remained composed. I am aware. Trevor stepped forward another pace. Then you understand you cannot remain in this area. The words were polite on the surface, but the meaning underneath was unmistakable. Naomi studied his expression. She had seen it before. Not once. Not twice. More times than she cared to remember. 24 years earlier, she had walked into a commercial office building in Atlanta carrying a leather portfolio and a proposal she had spent 6 months preparing. She was 22 years old, ambitious, and determined to secure funding for her first investment venture. Before she ever reached the conference room, a receptionist had looked at her and asked whether she was there to deliver supplies. When Naomi explained she was the person leading the presentation, the woman laughed. Not cruelly, not loudly. Somehow that made it worse. The assumption had been effortless, automatic. Naomi remembered standing in that lobby feeling invisible, feeling dismissed before speaking a single word. The memory lingered even now, not because it broke her, because it taught her something. People often revealed themselves long before they revealed the truth. Back in the present, Trevor folded his arms. Nobody important arrives without credentials. Several employees exchanged glances. The statement sounded harsher than he intended. Naomi noticed it too. Nobody important, she repeated. Trevor immediately realized what he had said, but pride prevented him from correcting it. You know exactly what I mean. Naomi nodded slowly. Actually, I think I do. The room felt heavier. Every sentence now carried more weight than the one before it. Brittany stood behind the desk looking increasingly uncomfortable, yet she continued to defend her position. You cannot just walk into a company and expect access. Naomi turned toward her. Is that what you think is happening? Brittany looked away first. Across the lobby, Maya felt her heart racing. She wanted to say something. She wanted to stop what was happening. But she was an intern. 6 weeks into her first corporate role. Trevor was 3 levels above her. Brittany had worked there for years. Speaking up felt impossible. Yet remaining silent suddenly felt worse. Mark looked between Naomi and Trevor. Something about the situation no longer made sense. The woman at the center of it all appeared calmer than anyone else in the room. Meanwhile, the people insisting she leave seemed increasingly anxious. Then Naomi reached into her tote bag and removed her phone. No dramatic gesture. No display of anger. Just a simple movement. She looked at the screen for a moment before lifting it to her ear. Good morning, Daniel, she said calmly. It is time. Begin Protocol 51. The words meant nothing to most people in the lobby, but somewhere far above them, inside the executive floors of Sterling Dynamics, a sequence of events quietly began moving into place. The moment Naomi ended the call, the lobby seemed to hold its breath. Nobody knew what Protocol 51 meant, but the name alone carried a strange weight. It sounded official, deliberate. not the kind of phrase someone invented in the middle of an argument. Trevor Mills heard it too, and although he tried not to show it, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Protocol 51, he repeated with a dismissive laugh. What is that supposed to mean? Naomi slipped her phone back into her tote. You will find out soon enough. Trevor shook his head. No. What I am finding out is that you are wasting company time. Brittany immediately nodded in agreement. Exactly, but her voice lacked the confidence it had carried earlier. She kept glancing toward her computer screen. The alert she had closed still bothered her. The more she thought about it, the less certain she felt. Across the lobby, Maya Brooks stood frozen beside a seating area. The ownership report remained open on her tablet. 51%. She looked down at the number again as if expecting it to change. It did not. The woman standing calmly in front of the reception desk was not a visitor. She was not a job applicant. She was not someone trying to gain access. She was the single most powerful owner in the entire company. Maya looked toward Trevor, then Brittany, then Mark. None of them knew. Yet, the realization made her stomach tighten. Meanwhile, on the 10th floor, several executive assistants received unusual notifications. Internal review requests appeared on their screens. Calendar locks activated. Compliance officers were copied on priority messages. A chain of communication quietly spread through departments that rarely interacted directly. Nobody in the lobby could see it happening, but the system had begun moving. Back downstairs, Trevor pointed toward the exit again. Last chance. Naomi looked at him calmly. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. Naomi nodded. And yet I am still here. A few employees nearby struggled to hide their reactions. One man lowered his coffee cup to conceal a smile. Another exchanged a look with a colleague. The balance of the room was beginning to shift. Not openly, not dramatically, but people were becoming less certain about Trevor and more curious about Naomi. Mark noticed it too. Maybe we should verify everything before escalating further, he suggested carefully. Trevor turned toward him immediately. There is nothing to verify. The answer came too fast. Too sharp. Mark fell silent, but the comment lingered. There is nothing to verify. Maya almost laughed in disbelief. There was everything to verify. Brittany suddenly glanced at her monitor and frowned. A new notification had appeared. Then another. Her fingers moved across the keyboard. The screen refreshed. More alerts. She clicked one. It disappeared. Two more replaced it. What is happening? She muttered. Trevor looked over. What? Brittany swallowed. I do not know. Naomi said nothing. She simply watched. The lobby lights reflected softly across the polished marble floor. Employees continued gathering near the edges of the room. Conversations had stopped completely now. Everyone was waiting. Somewhere above them, an executive elevator moved steadily downward. Floor 9. Floor 8. Floor 7. Unseen by the crowd below. Unseen by Trevor. Unseen by Brittany. But not by Naomi. She glanced briefly toward the elevator bank and checked the time. 9:23. Right on schedule. Then a new notification flashed across Brittany's monitor in bold letters. Executive Priority Review activated. Her face lost color. For the first time all morning, she looked genuinely afraid. The lobby fell silent. Even the soft hum of conversations from distant hallways seemed to disappear. Brittany stared at her monitor as more notifications appeared across the screen. Executive Priority Review activated. Ownership verification required. Immediate leadership notification. Her hands froze above the keyboard. Trevor noticed the change immediately. What is it? He asked. Brittany swallowed hard. I do not know. But she did know. At least part of her did. Something was very wrong. Or perhaps something had been wrong from the beginning. Then the executive elevator reached the ground floor. A soft chime echoed through the lobby. The doors opened. Heads turned instinctively. Out stepped Richard Hayes, Senior Corporate Operations Manager. 52 years old. 20 years with Sterling Dynamics. A man known throughout the company for being calm under pressure. Today he did not look calm. He looked alarmed. Richard moved quickly across the marble floor, scanning the lobby until his eyes landed on Naomi Carter. The moment he saw her, the color drained from his face. Oh no, he whispered. Then he started moving faster. Employees stepped aside as he crossed the lobby. Trevor smiled with relief. Finally, someone from upper management. Someone who would settle everything. Richard, Trevor called. Perfect timing. We have a visitor creating a disruption. Richard did not even look at him. He continued forward. Faster. The crowd parted instinctively. Brittany stood frozen behind the reception desk. Mark stared. Maya gripped her tablet so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Naomi remained exactly where she was. Calm, patient, watching. Richard was only 20 feet away now. Then 15. Then 10. Suddenly, he raised his voice. Stop. The word cracked through the lobby like a thunderclap. Every head turned toward him. Trevor blinked. Richard. But Richard was not finished. Stop right now, he shouted again as he hurried forward. His voice echoed off the stone walls. The entire lobby froze. Trevor took a confused step backward. Brittany looked terrified. Richard finally reached the reception area and turned toward them. His breathing was heavy. His expression was somewhere between disbelief and panic. Then he said the words that changed everything. Do you people have any idea who this is? Silence. Complete silence. Nobody answered. Richard pointed toward Naomi. She owns 51% of this company. The room stopped. It was as if time itself hesitated. Brittany stared at Naomi, then at Richard, then back at Naomi. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Trevor laughed once. A short, nervous sound. Wait. What? Richard turned toward him. 51%. Every syllable landed harder than the last. Controlling ownership. Majority shareholder. The single largest owner of Sterling Dynamics. Maya closed her eyes briefly. She had known it was coming, but hearing someone else say it out loud still felt unreal. Around the lobby, employees exchanged stunned looks. Several visitors openly gasped. One man lowered his coffee cup so abruptly that he nearly dropped it. Brittany looked back toward her monitor. The alerts suddenly made perfect sense. Every one of them. Naomi said nothing. She did not need to. The room was speaking for her now. Trevor's confidence collapsed visibly. There has to be some mistake, he said quietly. Richard stared at him. The mistake happened down here. Then he turned toward Naomi. His voice changed immediately. Respectful. Professional. Miss Carter, I am deeply sorry. Naomi met his gaze calmly. Interesting morning, Richard. Richard nodded once. Yes, ma'am. It certainly has been. And for the first time since she entered the building, nobody in the lobby questioned whether she belonged there. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The revelation had drained the lobby of every assumption that had fueled the morning. Trevor Mills stood frozen beside the reception desk, staring at Naomi Carter as though seeing her for the first time. Brittany Collins looked even worse. The confidence that had carried her through the confrontation had vanished completely. She glanced toward the employees gathered around the lobby and realized they had witnessed everything. Every dismissal, every assumption, every opportunity she had ignored. Richard Hayes took a slow breath and turned toward the reception desk. Pull the visitor logs, he said firmly. Pull the access records. Pull every alert generated in the last 30 minutes. Brittany swallowed. Sir, I now. His voice was not loud, but it carried authority. Brittany immediately turned toward her computer. Her fingers trembled as she opened the system. The screen filled with notifications. Ownership verification alerts. Executive access flags. Priority routing messages. One after another. Each warning had appeared long before the situation reached this point. Each warning had been dismissed. Around the lobby, employees exchanged stunned looks. Some shook their heads quietly. Others stared at Naomi with growing respect. Mark, the security officer, released a slow breath. Suddenly, every instinct he had trusted earlier made sense. He had sensed something was wrong from the beginning. He simply had not known how wrong. Maya Brooks remained near the seating area, clutching her tablet. Richard noticed her and walked over. Maya, she looked up nervously. Yes, sir. Were you the one who identified the ownership record? Maya nodded carefully. I found it in the shareholder report. Richard gave a small nod of approval. Good work. Trevor heard the exchange and lowered his eyes. The compliment landed harder than criticism. Across the room, Naomi remained calm. She was not smiling. She was not celebrating. That seemed to unsettle people even more. Most expected anger. Others expected triumph. Instead, she simply watched the company reveal itself. Richard's phone buzzed, then buzzed again. He checked the screen, and his expression became even more serious. Human Resources is reviewing the incident, he said. Compliance has opened an internal investigation. Executive leadership wants a complete report before noon. The words echoed through the lobby. Brittany closed her eyes briefly. Trevor looked toward the floor. The consequences were arriving faster than either of them expected. Another notification appeared on Richard's phone. He read it, nodded once, and looked directly at Brittany. Effective immediately, your reception system access is suspended pending review. The silence that followed was immediate. Brittany stared at him. Right now? Richard did not hesitate. Right now. A moment later, he turned toward Trevor. Executive leadership has also requested that you step away from operational authority until the investigation is complete. Trevor blinked. You are serious? Completely. Several employees exchanged stunned looks. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. Yet everyone understood what they were witnessing. Accountability. Not anger. Not revenge. Accountability. Brittany slowly removed her badge from the reception terminal. Trevor stepped back from the desk. For the first time all morning, neither had authority over the situation. Across the room, Naomi finally spoke. Interesting. Richard turned immediately. Ma'am. Naomi glanced around the lobby. Nobody asked who I was. Silence followed. Nobody asked why I was here. Several employees lowered their eyes. The conclusions came first. The facts came later. The statement settled over the room like a weight. Nobody argued with it because nobody could. Richard nodded slowly. You are right. What remained in the lobby was not fear. It was clarity. The balance of power had not changed. It had simply been revealed, and everyone standing there finally understood the difference. The lobby remained quiet long after the last explanation had been given. It was the kind of silence that arrives when people realize they have witnessed something larger than a misunderstanding. Richard Hayes stood near the reception desk reviewing messages arriving from executive leadership while employees slowly returned to their responsibilities. Yet nobody seemed eager to leave. The lesson unfolding in front of them felt more important than any meeting waiting upstairs. Naomi Carter looked around the lobby one final time. The polished floors were the same. The glass walls were the same. The company logo hanging above reception was the same. Nothing physical had changed. Yet everything felt different. Brittany Collins sat quietly behind the desk staring at a screen she was no longer reading. Trevor Mills remained nearby, unusually silent. For the first time all morning, neither seemed interested in defending their decisions. They had finally reached the place where explanations ended and reflection began. Richard approached Naomi. The executive board would like to meet immediately, he said. Naomi nodded. They can wait a few minutes. Richard looked surprised. Of course. Naomi glanced toward Maya Brooks. The young intern immediately straightened. Maya. Yes, ma'am. Maya answered. Why did you keep looking at me? Several people nearby listened carefully. Maya hesitated before answering honestly. Because something felt wrong. Naomi smiled slightly. You trusted your instincts. Maya nodded. I kept thinking there had to be more to the story. Naomi's expression softened. That is a rare habit. Keep it. Maya felt her face grow warm. It was the simplest compliment she had ever received, yet it meant more than any performance review she could imagine. Naomi then turned toward Mark. And you? Mark cleared his throat. I thought we should verify the facts before making assumptions. Naomi nodded once. A good security officer protects people and information, not assumptions. Mark smiled faintly. Around them, employees listened carefully. Every sentence felt less like a conversation and more like a lesson. Finally, Naomi looked toward Brittany and Trevor. Neither spoke. Neither looked away. Do you know what the real problem was today? Naomi asked. Trevor opened his mouth, then stopped. Brittany lowered her eyes. Naomi answered for them. The problem was never that you did not know who I was. The room became still again. The problem was what you were willing to do when you believed I was nobody. No one argued. No one could. The truth landed with quiet force. Naomi continued. Titles matter less than people think. Ownership matters less than people think. Character matters more. Her voice never rose. It did not need to. Every person who walks through these doors deserves the same respect before their credentials are known and after they are known. Several employees nodded. Others looked thoughtful. A few looked embarrassed. Naomi glanced one last time across the lobby that had tested everyone standing inside it. I did not come here to remind people that I own part of this company, she said. I came here to see whether this company still deserved the people who trust it. The words lingered long after she finished speaking. Then she turned toward the executive elevators. Richard followed beside her. The doors opened immediately. Before stepping inside, Naomi paused and looked back one final time. I did not raise my voice today, she said calmly. I raised the standard. The elevator doors closed. The lobby remained silent. And in that silence, everyone understood that power had never been the story. The story was what people revealed about themselves when they thought power was not watching.